switch over to my demo company here. And we'll talk a little bit about the standard journals. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go into the general ledger here, and we're going to put in today's date is going to be I'm going to make it 5/15/2020. We're using demo data, which is dated May of 2020. So we'll pick a sweet spot right in the middle of the month. All right, as we go into general journal entry here, if I were to start typing an entry, and let's just say, for example, I was going to do a payroll entry, maybe a manual payroll entry if I don't have the module, and I can get an entry number, I can start typing a description down here, whatever I want. I can come over here to my lines tab, and I can start typing, some account numbers like I was going to do a journal entry. So I'll just start working on that a little bit. And as I keep going, I can keep adding more accounts and more accounts and more accounts. Now, as soon as I've got a source journal and entry number, if I, as I was doing this, and for any of you who've done payroll entries in the GL directly that don't have a payroll module, let's say, these entries tend to be very long. So one of the things you can do to help save yourself some time is you can save this as a standard. So pretend this is maybe 20 rows long now, where I've only got 3. I can choose to save standard here, and then I can give it a standard journal description here. So in this case, payroll might be applicable. And then I can give it an entry here, payroll. And if I want to, I can save the comments with that, or I can uncheck that to not do that. So then I click accept, and I've now saved my standard. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cancel this entry and show you how I would actually pull that back up. All right, so if I were to come in here and to pick my payroll journal again, and I was to get an entry number, one of the things that lights up for me as soon as I do that is the copy from button. If I click the copy from button, you'll see that one of my options is to pull it in from the standard journal. All right, so if I hit OK there, I'll have a listing of all of the standards that I saved underneath of that journal, the journal being the PR. So you can have more than one. In this case, there's only one. And if I wanted to go ahead and just pull that in, I can do that. And here's everything that I just saved, including my comments. There's my lines. So that's a way of kind of capturing something that you've done in the past, saving it so that you can reuse it. Another thing I highly recommend that if you're going to use this feature is to actually print out your standard listing. So this button right here, standard listing, this is just a good thing to keep in your month-end folder if you're the type that does that. This just gives you kind of a report that shows you what you have in there without having to kind of remember. So we're going to say yes, and we're just going to preview this for today so you can kind of take a look at what this report might look like. And there it is. You can see that we also have some monthly allocations saved in here. And this is a way for you to quickly identify what source journal it is that it's saved under. That way you know what to use if you want to go ahead and use that feature. Okay, that's the standard journal entry. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about recurring journal entries. So right here on the general ledger main folder here, we go down right below the general journal entry, we see the recurring journal entry. So the recurring journal entry, this is the place where we define, what the recurring entries are. So one of the things we want to just talk about here is how are recurring journal entries different than standard journals. One way they're different is that dollar amounts, in addition to the GL account numbers, can be saved. So that standard journal entry didn't let us save the dollars, account numbers and comments, but not the dollars. The recurring entry also allows you to select multiple entries at the same time. So we'll see an example how we'll do that. And another thing to keep in mind, very important, is that with the recurring journal entries, you cannot edit or modify the entry before you update it, okay? So the question I always get about that is, well, what if I make a selection that isn't what I wanted? You can make a subsequent selection to wipe that out, or a selection for a recurring journal that doesn't exist. That'll essentially take it all out. We'll see that in a second. I'll do a little example here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull in a couple of these and talk about some of the key fields. So 2 tabs, when you set up a recurring journal, you tell it what journal you want to use, like AP, you give it a reference, and you give it a select cycle. Those are the 3 things that are the most important in terms of determining what comes in. You can obviously see that there's some other fields here. On the Lines tab, you define your entry just like you would any other entry. So as I scroll through here, I can see that there are several entries in here, and note that some of them have the same select cycles and some don't, but they all have a unique reference number in here. Now there's a listing for this report also, so I'm going to click the listing here, and we're going to just take a look at what's in here. And this is the listing basically telling us what's in here. So lots of stuff in here, as we can see. And if I go to the end of this report, there's one in here for depreciation. And in the select cycle, you want to be deliberate about that. So the demo data uses numbers like 98, 99. I prefer to use something a little bit more meaningful to me, and you can come up with your own codes. So in this example, for the depreciation one, I've used the characters MO. That represents monthly. Consider using QT for quarterly or AN for annually. The number I would use if it was something maybe that was a day of the month that I was supposed to post a recurring journal entry. And then we'll see how we can combine these to pull these in together here in a second. All right. So what we're going to do now is go to the recurring journal. And we're just going to go kind of play with this for a second. We're just going to hit preview here. And this screen right here, the recurring journal selection, this is where you do your heavy lifting in terms of what's going to come in. All right, so notice you have source journal, cycle, reference number. So you can pick, I'm going to do something here like, I'm just going to put MO. So if I was at the end of the month and I wanted to pull in all my recurring journal entries for the end of the month, and I use this cycle code, I could do that. I could put that in there, and it's going to bring in every one of those. So let's just hit proceed, and then we'll take a look at what we have. All right, there's my depreciation entry that I talked about. It's got the cycle MO. There's another one down here that I don't even know if I set up. Oh, it has to do with payroll. That was a monthly also. That came in. Those are the only 2 there. Now let's say that isn't really what I wanted, okay? So let's say I only wanted maybe this entry here for the depreciation, but I didn't really want this one down here. So the key to that is we have to remember what that value is. That is the reference number, okay? So I can hit close, and then if I want to update, I can say yes, but in this case I don't. I can go back to my recurring journal, and I could say preview, and I could tell it, no, I only want the source journal reference number to be DEPREC. And then I could hit proceed. And now I have only that one. So as you make your subsequent selections, you could be wiping out part of what you had before. Just be aware of that. The goal is you want to make sure you have everything in here and nothing you don't want before you do it. And you can use these in conjunction with each other as well. So you could use a combination, say, of reference number and select cycle to select more than one entry at a time. All right, I'm not going to update that. No point in doing that. Now, if I did that and I wanted to wipe the whole thing out, here's a technique for doing that. So if I run the recurring journal again and I say, hey, I changed my mind, I don't want to do any of that, I could say, reference number or select cycle. I'm just going to use ZZ because I happen to know there is nothing in there with ZZ. So if I hit proceed, and it's going to tell me there's nothing there, I've now just basically reset my recurring journal to not have anything ready to post. All right, next topic. I'm going to talk about allocations a little bit. Okay, so allocations are really just the movement of dollars from one source account in the general ledger to 2 or more other accounts. This is typically done to properly match expenses with departments or locations for where a number of reasons the dollars didn't end up in those accounts when they were entered into the system. Okay, so we're going to look at a little scenario here where we have an AP person that gets insurance bills That person codes the insurance bills for the vendor to a general insurance account. And then what we want to do is we want to be able to spread that insurance expense over to the various departments that we're going to bring it into. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the allocation entry. So right here in the general ledger main, here's our allocation entry screen, and we're just going to hit the lookup, and we're just going to look at the insurance one here, for example. Okay, so this is where we define the settings for a allocation. So right now in the header tab, we tell it, what is the source account, brings that right on in here. And we're using the middle segment here to be the department. And so 00 represents the fact that it's not department specific. Okay, so we have different allocation methods here. So this one's set up for percent. We'll see that because this is percent, when we go to the lines tab, we'll have to define what the percent is. You can use quantity as a kind of a method here as well. The quantity, we'll take the quantity in it for each destination account and use it in your calculations. And you can also get a help screen on this down here with a little bit more information on this. Basis, works a little different. It's based on some type of activity or a balance or other statistics. And we're going to do an example with that in a bit that's a little more advanced. So we'll start out basic here. Okay, I think I lost my, let me pull that one back in here. Look like one of my fields was going away. All right, so allocation cycle. There's different cycles that you can do this on. So manual means it's manual, which means it gets done in the general journal entry. It can also be a period. It can be quarterly or it can be annual. So when we do it manually, we're going to do it through the general ledger, main menu. If we do it one of these other ones, it's going to be under our period end. We'll see that in here shortly. This just tells us what is it that we want this to actually be able to distribute. In this case, we're taking the whole balance, whatever's there. We're going to bring it over, give it a little description here. We're going to come over to the lines now, and here's where we tell it where it needs to go. All right, so now we have the 530 Department 10, and Department 20, Department 30, and Department 60. So those represent such things like, marketing, accounting, customer service, shipping and handling, department, whatever that is. So that's where we define it. So now what we're going to do that we have this set up, we're going to go take a look at the account first before we do it. And we're going to take a look at that 530 account. And 530-0003 is our general insurance expense. And if we look in here, we can see that we have $1,480 roughly of insurance expense that needs to be spread out to the other departments. Now we're going to go into general journal entry. We're going to use our allocation journal, which I've set up. We're going to get an entry number, and we're going to go ahead and use the copy from. And because this is a manual setting for the type, the allocation, we're going to have that available here. So we'll pull that in, and then here we're just going to look at the allocation number. There's our insurance expense right there. All right, comes on in, has our source account, has our balance here. Notice we can change that balance. That screen's lighted up, and we can use these, other buttons to also do the numbers. But it's basically doing right out of the can what we want it to do. So I pull that in there, and I come over here, and I look at my entry. There is the credit or the decrease to the general insurance expense. And as you can see, it's taken those percentages that we set up, and it's done the math for us and brought that right over. Okay, and then this would update just like any other journal entry at this point. So I'm not going to bother doing that. You all probably know how to actually update, but in case you didn't, we just hit the print button down here and you update. Okay, I'm not going to actually even bother doing it. the updating isn't such the exciting part. That'll just take time up from other topics. If anybody wants to see that, let us know. All right, the next example we're going to do is a little bit more of an advanced example here. With this one, we're going to create some non-financial accounts, or they're probably already set up in here. We're going to take a look at some non-financial accounts, and we're going to look at those accounts, and we're going to use those non-financial accounts to store non-financial information. And in this example, what we're going to do is store square footage information for departments. So let's just take a look at how you might set this up first. So if you go to your general ledger setup, account group maintenance down here, this is the place where you tell Sage 100, generally speaking, what your account ranges are. So it starts with 000 always. In this case, we're telling it the current assets begin at account group 000, meaning main account starting with 000, and they go up to basically account number 149, where the property, plant, and equipment takes over. If we go down here, if I expand this out a little bit, you'll see I've created a non-financial group kind of at the end of my chart of accounts, defined as non-financial. Now what we're going to go do is take a look at those non-financial accounts. So if I come down here to the 995s, I can see that I've got 3 995 accounts. So I'll pull up the first one. And this says that it's a non-financial account. It's for sales and marketing square footage. So what I did here is I entered a journal entry for a debit of $1,000 to record the fact that this sales and marketing department square footage is 1,000 feet. If we look at the next department, which is the accounting department, hey, we don't want to leave the accountants out of this. Their department is larger. They have 2,000 square feet. And notice I made that entry with the NF journal. Okay, so when you do a journal entry with the NF journal, it doesn't need to balance like a traditional financial journal does. It's just for recording statistics. And this is the last one I set up here. We're calling this customer service. They have the most square feet at 3,000. So that's all we did is we set up that, we did those journal entries, and now we're set to go. Okay, so there's that. So now we're going to come back to our allocation entry. And we're going to look up here, and we're going to talk about the rent. So this first allocation number, this is the one I set up for this, allocation number 1. It says rent allocation with department square footage basis. So we have our source account, the 555, that's our main rent account. So when the person pays the rent bill, they're coding it to the 55500. Our allocation method in this case is basis, because the basis is going to be the square footage stored in the non-statistical accounts in the 995 series. We're wanting to, move the whole ending balance over to our departments. We've told that it's a manual cycle, meaning it's going to be done through the general journal entry. We're going to bring that whole balance is what we're going to allocate. If we come over here to the lines, this is where we stitch everything together, okay? So you see the normal GL account codes here, and they're representing their departments, 555, 10, 20, and 30, respectively, which we have linked to these non-financial accounts, 995, 10, 20, and 30, respectively. And you can see those department codes right there. So that's how we kind of set up the entry. All right, now we're just going to take a quick look at the source account and just kind of take a peek at what the balance is in that account, get an idea of what we might expect to happen. So we'll pull up the 55500. This is our general capture, and it looks like we've got about 11,000 and change in rent expense. So that's what we're looking to allocate. All right, so now we're going to go back to the general journal entry, and we're going to go ahead and pull this in. And now we're going to do the copy from, and we're going to use the allocation again, and we're going to look up our allocation. And there's our allocation number 1 that we talked about as our setting when we set it up. So that's the one we want to use. And it comes in here. It looks very similar like the last example. It's got our balance here that we want. So we're going to say OK. And now we're going to go see if it did the math for us accordingly. So there we are. It appears to have worked. So in this example, you know, it'd be nice if we had a nice $10,000 round number to see the math. But basically, that department 10 there, that's our sales department. So they were supposed to get 17%. So if anybody wants to do the math, you'll see that these percentages are accurate. So this is a way we use literally some non-financial accounts to store square footage, which is generally what rent is based on, to actually allocate the rent expense, you know, kind of streamlining the AP person's task of not having to code that out first. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is a not real well-known feature in the general ledger called roll-up codes. I'm not going to bother updating that. So we're going to go back to our general ledger options here. Whoops, it tells me task is in use and can only be viewed. Let me satisfy that. I'm pretty sure it's because I had that open. Okay, so here we are. So on the main tab in your general ledger options, Sage has given you these 4 what are called roll-up types. So in this example, what I've done is I have labeled one of those manager, and I've labeled another one project. You put any label you want on here. Those are just what I'm doing for an example. Then what we did, and you have to hit accept to save your options there, the next thing you want to do is actually set up your roll-up code. So under the GL setup, you have roll-up code maintenance. And as you define each of those in the GL options, you'll have the box will light up here with whatever you've set up in there. So I only have these 2 because these are the only 2 I set up. Here I've got manager, and I've entered red, white, and blue. So those are my manager's last name, red, white, and blue. If I look at the project, in this case I made up 3 projects, office remodel, you know, whatever you want to track in your GL. And the idea of roll-up codes is that basically it's going to allow us to do what I kind of call ad hoc reporting in the GL. So whereas the GL has a very defined structure with, you know, the account structure that we saw starting with the main account, and we've talked about the account group maintenance, which defines the ranges of each account type, like current assets versus liabilities. Those all follow the traditional accounting structure, and all of our normal accounting reports and work kind of follows that structure. So with these roll-up codes, we're kind of allowing ourselves to be outside of that. Okay, then what we would do next with this particular feature is we would actually need to assign roll-up code values to the accounts that would be applicable. So what we'll do is we'll go into account maintenance, and we'll just take a look at some of these. I think I have some under the 400 series. So let's see here, 400-0100, perfect. So here on each general ledger account, we now have those same boxes light up, and I can pick from my list what I want here. So this one has blue, this one has red, this one has white, and if I go through here, you'll see there's some other ones that I set up in there. Then as you do transactions, we're going to be able to run reports now based on those values, not just the traditional style. So here, let's run some reports and see what we got. I think I've did some dummy entries in here already, so we'll take a look. So we're going to come over here to our reports, and I'm going to start with my favorite report, being a nerd type, the General Ledger Detail Report here. And you'll basically just see these on a lot of the reports once you turn this on. If we go to the bottom of our report grid now, we'll see now that the roll-up codes are showing up down here, just like a user-defined field. This delete yes, no is a user-defined field, but these are our roll-up codes. So if I wanted to run a report, say, for red, I could type red, and we'll see what we get. So here's all the GL accounts for red. So, and these could be on any combination of accounts you nilly-willy want. So in other words, it doesn't have to follow the account structure like a traditional accounting report would. All right, so you can put them on any accounts you nilly-willy want. Balance sheet accounts, income statement accounts, and the report will pull all of those. Okay. Now you could, if we left this to all, and let's see here. Oh, let's look at a different report actually. Let's look at the financial reports. Now I've got one in here called roll-up codes. So what we're going to do is we're just going to run that one and take a look at that. Okay, so we set this up. This happens to be an income statement. So here's the income statement for blue, all the accounts that were associated with blue. And if I close that, and this is just the way the product works, I don't love this, but it will pop up the next one, which is our red. Okay, so there's the income statement for the red manager. And here is our income statement for the white manager. Okay, so you can actually run financial reports like that as well. Okay, and a couple other things here that we might want to talk about in the GL that are valuable is the Business Insights dashboard. So we're going to just pop into the Business Insights dashboard and show you a couple things in case you don't know it. I'm always surprised how many people don't know about this. And I'll just do the same date. Now this does require a little bit of setup, and mine has everything in here. So I'm going to, go ahead and run this, and then we'll zip down to the part of it that covers the general ledger, okay, which is at the bottom. So as I scroll down to the bottom, skipping by all the stuff that is not general ledger specific, I can get down here toward the bottom and I can see kind of the general ledger area. So I can see here some quick hits on my balance sheet. I can click on any of these links to get these reports. As I scroll down, if you are doing budgeting, then you can see some budget information. Here's some income statement information, very similar. We've got some leverage ratios in here, some charts about efficiency, solvency ratios, all very visual stuff to kind of help you, use a dashboard, if you will, is what this is, to kind of keep an eye on things from a general ledger standpoint. So there's a few things in there like that. Now, just a couple other things to kind of wrap up our lunch and learn today. Oops, didn't mean to close that, sorry. Is we also want to talk about the Business Insights Explorer. So every module has an Explorer menu. And there's one under Business Insights for everything. But if we go to General Ledger, and we come down here to the Explorer area, the Explorer menu, one of the things we'll see is that there are actually Business Insights Explorer views related to that. So if we go into the Account Transactions view, for example, and I'll just add a 0 to expand that. We don't want to lose any data. This is a very customizable and configuration tool. We actually do an entire separate lunch and learn on this, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. But this tool is very valuable. You can reorganize your stuff. You could say, for example, group by a source journal, and then I'll have all my AP items there. You can do summaries and grand totals if you want a subtotal and grand total based on your grouping. You can color code data in here, so based on values. Anything greater than 1,000, I want it to show in red, for example. All kinds of stuff you can do in here. The thing I really like about the Business Insights Explorer is not only everything I just mentioned and the fact that you can do really simple charting over here on the chart tab, but everything that's in here when you export it, exports very cleanly to Excel because it's in a grid. So anything that's in a grid tends to go into Excel very well. Last but not least, there's a very powerful tool that Sage has put out, and that's their Sage Intelligence Reporting. So we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time on this. We also have a separate lunch and learn on this. But I'm going to run one report just so you can see something and get an idea what you might be able to do. So we'll launch our report manager here. And, Sage Intelligence can report on things that aren't just GL based. It can also report on other modules. It was really introduced as a replacement for FRX, which some of you might have heard of in the past. And I guess what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run one here, just nilly-willy, and just see what we get. And then we'll have a chance to maybe take some questions. Now, this does take a second to generate. But Sage Intelligence is really cool because it actually creates the output directly in Excel, which is very nice. It also allows you to drill down on the data to see detail, which you can't do with a traditional financial report in Sage 100 that we ran, if we ran like a balance sheet or something. Okay, so let's just look at something here, basic. So here's a report that I started building for the Lunch and Learn, actually. And we're not going to get into all this. We're just going to kind of show you what it looks like. Here's an example of a value being returned. And I just want to show you a drill down. Hopefully it won't make me look bad. And this way we can kind of drill down to the details here. And if we were to highlight all that, we'd see that that adds up to the, the 20 number that we have over here on the front. In some cases, there's even an additional drill down. I don't know if this one has it, but let's just try it and see what happens. And there's a drill down for the drill down. So really getting down to literally the individual transaction level, which is part of why I wanted to show you that about Sage Intelligence in terms of GL reporting. Okay, so drilled balance, drilled the transactions, and I think that all just came off of our, this is a trend income statement that I'm working on. All right, so that's pretty much what I had to show you guys for the Lunch and Learn. Carla, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, excellent. Great job, Bruce. I am going to go ahead. I didn't see any questions throughout the presentation, but I have now unmuted everyone's line. So if you have any questions, are there any questions or comments? It was so good, Bruce. There was no questions. That's fabulous.
We left them speechless.
Exactly, you left them speeches. Perfect. Okay, please let us know if you have any questions. Anything comes up, you can email am@goism. And please also check out our YouTube channel, which will have this recording as well as a bunch of other ones. And watch out for our next Lunch and Learn schedule. We've got a bunch going on this month and a bunch going on next month. So you should all be on the newsletter list and check them out. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice afternoon.
Bye, everyone.